an inverted satanic cross, a peace symbol, a pentagon, and the eye in the triangle, were taking up Danny Price Fixer's attention back in New York. He had finally decided to play his hunch about the confrontation bombing and the 5 associated disappearances. The decision came after he and the acting head of homicide received a thorough ass-chewing from the police commissioner himself.
Malik is gone, the Walsh woman is gone, this Dorn kid was taken right out of a jail in Texas, 2 of my best men, Goodman and Muldoon, are gone, the feds are nasty, and I can tell they know something that makes this case even more important than 5 possible murders alone would account for. I want you to report some kind of progress before the day is over, or I'll replace you with Post-Toasties Junior G-Men!
When they escaped into the hall, Price Fixer asked the man from homicide, Van Meter,
"What are you going to do?"
Go back and give my men the same ass chewing. I'll produce. And what are you going to do?
He added, lamely.
"I'm gonna play a hunch,"
Danny said, and he walked down to Bunko Fraud, where he exchanged some words with a detective named Sergeant Joe Friday, who always insisted on trying to act like his namesake in the famous television series.
"I want a mystic," Danny said.
"Palmist, crystal gazer, witch, astrologer, any preference?"
Friday asked.
The technique doesn't matter. I want one you've never been able to pin anything on. One you investigated and found a little scary, as if she or he really did have something on the ball."
"I know the one you want,"
Friday said emphatically, hitting the intercom button on his phone.
"R&I,"
he said, and waited.
"Corella, send up the package on Mama Sutra."
The package, when it shot out of the inner office tube, proved to be all that Danny had hoped for. The receptionist, an attractive young Chinese woman named Mao something or other, put down her phone and said,
"You can go right in."
Danny opened the door and walked into a completely austere room, white as the North Pole. The white walls had no paintings, the white rug was solid white without any design in it, and Mama Sutra's desk and the Danish chair facing it were also white. He realized that the total lack of occult paraphernalia, together with the lack of color, was certainly more impressive than heavy curtains, shadows, smoldering candles, and a crystal ball.
"What can I do for you?"
she asked in a brisk, businesslike manner.
"I'm a detective on the New York police,"
Danny said, showing her his badge.
"I'm not here to hassle you or give you any trouble. I need knowledge and advice, and I'll pay for it out of my own pocket."
She smiled gently.
"I promise no miracles, and my knowledge is limited. Perhaps I can help you, perhaps not. There will be no fee in either case. Being in a sensitive profession, I would like to keep on friendly terms with the police."
Danny nodded.
"Thanks,"
he said.
"Here's the story."
"Wait."
Mama Sutra frowned.
"I think I am picking up something already. Yes. District Attorney Wade. Clark. The ship is sinking. 2422. If I can't live as please, let me die when I choose. Does any of that mean anything to you?"
"Only the first part,"
Danny said, perplexed.
"I suspect that the matter I'm investigating goes back at least as far as the assassination of John F. Kennedy. The man who handled the original investigation of that killing in Dallas was District Attorney Henry Wade. The rest of it doesn't help at all, though. Where did you get it from?"
"There are vibrations, and I register them."
Mama Sutra smiled again.
"That's the best explanation I can offer. It just happens, and I've learned how to use it, somewhat. I hope someday before I die a psychologist will go far enough out in his investigations to find something that will explain to me what I do. The sinking ship is meaningless. How about the date, June 15, 1904? That seems to be on the same wave."
Price Fixer shook his head.
"No help, as they say in poker."
"Wait,"
Mama Sutra said.
"it means something to me. There was an Irish writer, James Joyce, who studied the theosophy of Blavatsky and the mysticism of the Golden Dawn Society. He wrote a novel in which all the action takes place on June 16, 1904. The novel is called Ulysses and is impregnated on every page with coded mystical revelations. And, yes, Now I remember. There is a shipwreck mentioned in it. Joyce made all the background details historically accurate, so he included what was actually in the Dublin papers that day. The book takes place in Dublin, you see.
Did you say Golden Dawn?
Price Fixer demanded, excitedly.
Yes. Does that help?
It just adds to the confusion, but at least it shows you're on the right track. The case I'm working on seems to be connected with the disappearance of a professor from a university in Massachusetts several years ago, and he'd left behind some notes that mentioned the Golden Dawn Society and, let's see, some of its members. Alistair Crowley is one name I remember.
To Mega Tiran.
Mama Sutra said slowly, beginning to pale slightly.
Young man, what you are involved in is very serious, much more than an ordinary police officer could understand. But you are not an ordinary police officer, or you wouldn't have come to me in the first place. Let me tell you flatly, then, that what you have stumbled upon is something that could very easily involve both James Joyce's mysticism and the assassination of President John Kennedy. But to understand it, you will have to stretch your mind to the breaking point. Let me suggest that you wait while I have my receptionist make you a rather stiff drink.
Miss Mao entered with a tray.
Your drink, sir,
she said softly. Danny took the glass and watched her gracefully walk back toward the door.
Mao is Chinese for cat,
he remembered from his years in Army intelligence.
And she certainly moved like a cat. Enough of that.
He took a stiff wallop of the bourbon and said,
Go ahead. Start. I'll take some more of the medicine when my mind starts crumbling.
I'll give it to you raw,
Mama Sutra said quietly.
The Earth has already been invaded from outer space. It is not some threat in the future for writers to play with. It happened a long time ago. 50 million years ago, to be exact.
Danny took another belt of his drink.
The Loigor,
he said.
That was their generic name for themselves. There were several races of them. They were not entirely composed of matter as we understand it, and they do not occupy space and time in the concrete way that furniture does. Did you take any physics in high school?
Nothing like relativity,
Danny said, realizing that he was believing all this.
Sound and light,
she asked.
A little.
Then you probably know two elementary experiments. Project a white light through a prism, and a spectrum appears on the screen behind the prism. You've seen that?
Yes.
And the experiment with a glass tube that has a thin layer of colored powder on the bottom. When you send a sound wave through it?
Yeah, and the wave leaves little marks at each of its valleys, and you can see them in the powder.
The track of the invisible wave in a visible medium.
Very well. Now you can picture, perhaps, how the Loigor, although not made of matter as we understand it, can manifest themselves in matter, leaving traces that show, let us say, a cross-section of what they really are.
Danny nodded, totally absorbed.
And they've been at war with us through all of history?
Danny asked unhappily.
Not at all. Are the stockyards at war with the cattle? It's nothing like war at all.
Mama Sutra said simply.
It's just that they own us.
I see.
Danny said.
Yes, of course. I see.
He looked into his empty glass dismally.
Could I have another?
He murmured.
There's nothing we can do about it?
He asked.
There is one group that has been trying to liberate humanity,
Mama Sutra said.
But Loigor have great powers to warp and distort minds. This group is the most maligned, slandered, and hated people on earth. All the evil they seek to prevent has been attributed to them. They operate in secret, because otherwise they would be destroyed. Even now, the John Birch Society and various other fanatics, including an evil genius named Hagbard Chelin, struggle ceaselessly to combat the group of whom I speak. They have many names. the Great White Brotherhood, the Brethren of the Rosy Cross, the Golden Dawn. Usually, though, they are known as the Illuminati.
Yes,
Danny cried excitedly.
there was a whole bunch of memos about them at the scene of the crime that started this case.
And the memos, I would wager, portrayed them in an unfavorable light.
Sure did.
Danny agreed.
Made 'em seem like the worst bastards in history. Pardon me, ma'am. I'm getting drunk.
He thought.
That is how they are usually portrayed.
Mama Sutra said sadly.
Their enemies are many, and they are few.
Who are their enemies?
Danny leaned forward eagerly.
The cult of the yellow sign.
Mama Sutra replied.
This is a group serving one particular Loiger called Hastur. They live in such terror of this being that they usually call him He Who Is Not To Be Named. Hastur resides in a mysterious place called Hali, which was formerly a lake but is now just a desert. Hali was by a great city in the lost civilization of Carcosa. They have been mentioned, unwisely I think, by certain writers, such as Bierce and Chambers and Lovecraft and Block and Derleth. Carcosa was located where the Gobi Desert is at present. The major cities were Hali, Nar, and Sarnath. The cult of the yellow sign has managed to conceal all this rather thoroughly, although a few archaeologists have published some interesting speculations about the Gobi area. Most of the evidence of a great civilization before Sumer and Egypt has been either hidden or doctored so that it seems to point to Atlantis. Actually, Atlantis never existed, but the cult of the yellow sign carefully keeps the myth alive so nobody will discover what went on, and still goes on in the Gobian wastelands. You see, the cult of the yellow sign still goes there on certain occasions to worship and make certain transactions with Hastur and with Shub-Niggurath, a Loiger who is known in mystical literature as the Black Goat with 1,000 young, and with Nyarlathotep, who appears either as a solid black man, not a Negro, but black as an abyss, or else a gigantic faceless flute player. But I repeat, you cannot understand the Loiger by these manifestations or cross-sections into our space-time continuum. Do you believe in God?
Yes.
Danny answered, startled by the sudden personal question.
Take a little more of your drink. I must tell you now that your God is another manifestation of some Loiger. That is how religion began, and how the Loiger and their servants in the cult of the yellow sign continue it. Always the purpose of the cult has been to serve the Loiger, at the expense of other human beings. Since the rise of the Illuminati, the cult has also acted to combat their work and discredit them.
Danny was glad that Miss Mao arrived then with his third stiff bourbon.
And who are the Illuminati? And what is their goal?
He asked, belting away a strong swallow.
Their founder,
Mama Sutra said,
was the first man to think rationally about the Loiger. He realized that they were not supernatural, but just another aspect of nature, not all-powerful, but just more powerful than us, and that when they came out of the heavens, they came from other worlds like this one. His name has come down to us in certain secret teachings and documents. It was Ma'lik.
Jesus, that's the name of the guy whose disappearance started all this.
The name meant one who knows in the Carcosan tongue. His followers, the Illuminati, are those who have seen the light of reason, which is quite distinct from the stupefying and mind-destroying light in which the Loiger sometimes appear, to overwhelm and mystify their servants in the cult of the yellow sign. What Ma'lik sought, what the Illuminati still seek, is scientific knowledge that will surpass the powers of the Loiger, end mankind's enslavement, and allow us all to become self-owners instead of property. You are already, at this very moment, in great peril.